Hi everybody, it's Teacher Rochelle, and today I'm going to share with you the story of the Exile and Return. This is our little piece of the desert. The desert is a dangerous place. There's very little food in the desert, and there's very little water in the desert, so sometimes people die in the desert. When the wind blows, the shape of the desert can change, and people sometimes lose their way. During the day, the sun is so hot that people need to wear lots of clothes to protect themselves from the scorching sun. And when the wind blows, the sand stings when it hits your face and your hands. So you need to wear many clothes to protect yourself from the blowing wind and the stinging sand. And at night, it is very cold in the desert. So you need to wear lots of clothes to stay warm. The desert is a dangerous place. People don't go to the desert unless they have to. This is Jerusalem. And here is the wall. Inside is the temple built for God. Here are some of the people of God. The people knew that God was in the temple, but they also thought that the temple was the only place that you could pray to God. The people believed that the wall of the city would protect them from everything. But then the Assyrians came and they attacked the city. It was a terrible time. The people fought and some starved to death. Finally, the Assyrians left. But then the Babylonians came, and they did not go away. Their king wanted the city of Jerusalem for himself. So they broke down the walls, and they burned the temple, and they took many of the people of God away from the city of Jerusalem. And there were only a few people left in the land. The soldiers marched the people of God across the desert, and the people looked back at the burning city, and they wondered if they would ever see it again. As they marched across the desert, the people had to do everything the soldiers told them to do. They had to get up when the soldiers told them to get up. They had to eat what the soldiers told them to eat. They had to go where the soldiers told them to go. And they had to go to bed when the soldiers told them to go to bed. They began to grow weary, and some died. It took a very long time. The people of God were in exile. They could not go back home. The people hung their harps on weeping willow trees. They sang sad songs. They even dreamed of Jerusalem and the temple, but they could not go home. And when they prayed, they would turn toward Jerusalem. Slowly, the people began to understand that God was in this place too. God's presence came to them when they gathered together to read the scriptures and share old stories and to pray. The king of Babylon allowed many of the people to work. Some of them set up little shops, and many of them worked for the king. So it was a really big surprise when the king of Persia came with his army and took the city of Babylon for himself. The new king allowed some of the people to go back to Jerusalem. They went with Ezra. And they began to rebuild the temple. More people were allowed to go back, and they went with Nehemiah. And they began to rebuild the wall of the city. The people of God were no longer in exile. They could go home again. But do you know what happened? Not everybody went back home, because they now knew that God was in this strange and foreign land too. So some of the people stayed.